So there's lots of, I mean, looking at it holistically, there's tons of potential positives that are coming out of it that are being tested for. What in your opinion are the risks?
Well, we already. Now that's a good question, actually. I guess we don't have data for 5 to 10 years. You know, there are bits of evidence. You know, well, let me start it this way: you don't get something for nothing. You know, very rarely. Statins are, you know, the drugs that by far anything else lower the risk of heart attacks and strokes. You know, and I'm on a statin. You know, I've you know, you look at me and think look healthy, but you know, I've got family history of heart disease and I've got high risk and so on and so on. But statins also slightly increase the risk of diabetes. In a way, you know, tiny, it's relatively small for so many people. It doesn't matter. Okay. For somebody like me, it probably matters a little bit more because I'm high risk of diabetes. So I have to try hard on physical activity to try and I can mitigate that risk. It's a tiny, but my protection of heart attacks by my statin is around about 40 to 50%. The increase in risk of diabetes is about 5 to 10%. But diabetes is a sugar level. Heart attack is something really hard. So, you know, I'm going to keep taking my statin. So you get so no drug is complete. You know, aspirin, the humble aspirin increases risk of bleeds. You know, in the gut and in the brain. So it protects, and that's why we don't prescribe it in people without heart disease anymore, or very rarely. We only give it to people with heart disease. Really, I mean, there are a few caveats to that, but that's generally what we do. So long-term risks, and I mean, clearly there's the short-term risks of vomiting, you know, and GI. Some people who have a lot of vomiting, you know, they need to stop or cut the dose substantially.
Yeah.
If they continue to vomit too much, that can be really harmful. So we want to avoid that. We now know that. We start low, go slow with the dose. There is also some piece of evidence that there may be some eye condition that might be higher with people on these drugs. It's a very, very rare eye condition. In fact, it's an eye condition I'd never even heard of. And so if that number goes up, I don't know what the number is, say 1 in 10,000 to 2 in 10,000, that's a risk. But that means that your excess risk is 1 in 10,000. It's something we have to explain to patients, but the vast majority is going to say, well, I'll take that risk, doc. If you're saying to me, I can lose 20 kilograms, reduce the risk of heart attacks by 20%, you know, you show me all these benefits and that one, okay, I'll take that risk. You know, it's... Are there other things that will come up in the future? I don't know. There was always a concern about pancreatitis, a condition which inflames an organ in your system that makes a lot of your digestive fluids, and it makes insulin. You know, but at the moment in the trials that we've done, albeit with lower doses, we haven't seen an excess risk of pancreatitis compared to placebo at this moment in time. There is an increased risk of gallbladder disease with these drugs.
Why?
Right, that's interesting. The reason being, this comes back to cholesterol, would you believe, and other things. When you lose weight, right, you've got lots of body cells, right? When you lose weight, you have to get, you know, you have to break down some of your tissues, and you have to get rid of that. You know, some of that obviously goes in your bowels, and so, I don't know if it goes in your bowels, but you know, you pee stuff out.
Yeah.
But some of it goes into the bile. You know, lots of your cells are full of cholesterol and phospholipids, right? Cholesterol is often excreted into the bile, and it can make stones.
Ah, okay.
So whenever you lose weight, if the same thing happens in bariatric surgery, or if you lose weight by other methods, gallbladder disease goes up. Because you're having to break down bodily stuff. Some of it has to go in the bile. The bile gets... This is my intuitive guess. I think it's probably correct, is that because these stones are full of things like phospholipids that are made in lipids, you know.
Yes.
You're getting rid of components that have to then come through the body, so you're saturating more of your bile. That makes more stones, and you get more stones. So you double the risk of stones.
That's quite high though, especially in older people, because the risk...
tell people if they get, you know, so well, yes and no. I mean, you know, it's what's known as cholecystitis. They get pain, they get it diagnosed, they get it out.
Yeah.
You know, Yeah, it's double the risk, but you know, it's still an absolute risk. I can't remember what the absolute risk is. You know, is it 1 in 100 or something like that? It's still relatively low.
Yeah.
If you look at the totality of the evidence thus far with, say, Ozempic or semaglutide, and combine its trials in people with heart attack, previous heart disease, heart failure, or kidney disease, the total number of serious adverse events with these drugs, was less than with placebo.
Wow. Okay.
That means even though there was more gallbladder disease and other things, people who are losing weight will still, that the benefits of the drugs in terms of reducing harm were still greater.
It just totally outweighed the negatives.
Yes. Serious adverse events, they were down a bit. So basically they outweighed the negatives, yes. And
right.
So in other words, if you've got a range of diseases that are going to happen to you because of a certain weight, right? You take this drug, overall, one or two might go up, but more will go down.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you take into the fact that you're actually going to feel a lot better, so the net benefits still outweigh the harms substantially.
Okay.
Substantially.
If you guys enjoyed that clip, please do me a huge favor before you go and head over to our Into the Mind podcast official page where we have the raw, uncut Into the Mind podcast, and hit that subscribe button. And the more subscribers we get, the more incredible guests we can get on the show. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all real soon.